Hello and welcome to Gaming History 101. My name is Sasha and I'll be your host today. Despite what people might tell you about the Atari Jaguar, it was actually a pretty decent system. It had a lot of decent games, and assuming you can get past the many faults the system has, it was very good in its own way, and it excelled at certain things other consoles didn't. It claimed to be the first 64-bit system, and it had a lot of games that looked a lot better than the competition, and it even had a CD attachment that looked slightly like a toilet. But despite that, it still fell behind the rest of the competition, and that's what we're here to talk about today. On this episode, we're talking about the Atari Jaguar, what it was, and its downfall. With that, let's get a move on. In early 1991, the most technologically superior console on the market released was the Sega Genesis. The Genesis, while technologically very powerful, was one amongst a lot of different systems that were on the market and a lot of others that were soon to come out. The Super Nintendo was just about to be released, and on the market were a plethora of other choices like the NAC PC Engine or TurboGrafx-16, the Master System, the NES, and some others that nobody really cares about. During this time, it was rumored that Atari, of all entities, will be making a comeback, this time with a 32-bit system. However, that year's CES brought a new announcement where Atari said that the Panther was cancelled so that they could work on the successor to the Panther, the Jaguar. In reality, both projects existed at the same time. However, the team working on the Jaguar made more progress on the hardware, and they decided to go with that instead of sticking around with something that wasn't going anywhere, as, you know, people with things to do tend to do. Initially, Atari was very sparse on information with the Jaguar because they wanted to keep things under wraps. However, as time went on, they started to give press releases. These press releases gave out certain information about the Jaguar's specs. Atari's original release date for the Jaguar was 1993, which would have made it the most powerful system at the time since it dropped with a 64-bit processor on the inside. The Jaguar was made up of 5 processors spread out over 3 chips. The first 2, named Tom and Jerry, were proprietary ones, and the other chip was a Motorola 68000 coprocessor. The development units for the Jaguar cost anywhere between $7,500 and $9,000, which was pretty cheap, all things considered, for development units. These ran on IBM or Atari's TT-030 computers. At the official launch announcement, the Jaguar cost $200 and included a Cybermorph cartridge and a single controller. However, at store shelves, it was actually $250, but even with the high price tag, it still sold quick. At launch, critical reception was mixed. Some people thought it was awesome because of the added power, others thought it fell behind on what Atari promised. IBM was manufacturing the system for Atari, and things were looking up, from that standpoint at least. Atari was set to market the Jaguar with a $3 million advertising budget, a telephone support line, and promised support from over 20 third-party developers. Even with all this awesome stuff planned, people still thought Atari wasn't able to deliver on its promises. The first Jaguar game, the pack-in known as Cybermorph, was technologically impressive for its time. It kinda looked like Star Fox, actually. It was still criticized for having a weak color palette and design flaws. The second game, Trevor McFur and the Crescent Galaxy, was heavily criticized, and some even called it an overglorified demo. Following the last 2 games, Raiden and Dino Dudes were released, and gamers complained they looked like 16-bit games. Kind of a bad track record for what's supposed to be 64-bit, right? Then Tempest 2000 happened. Tempest 2000 was one of the hit Jaguar games, and it's often considered to be the killer app for the Jaguar. The game was a remake of Atari's classic Tempest game that came out in arcades in 1981. It was well received and had an awesome soundtrack to boot. Following Tempest were ports of Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, and Alien vs. Predator, with Alien vs. Predator being the Jaguar's best-selling game. The 1994 Christmas season was very important to Atari, so they had to make sure they had a lot of sales. However, unfortunately for Atari and the rest of the gaming industry, nothing went well with that Christmas season because of poor sales. Lackluster titles such as Checkered Flag, Kasumi Ninja, and Club Drive didn't really help any sales because, you know, nobody unless you're masochistic wants to buy terrible games. The Sega Saturn, PlayStation, and Ultra 64 were just on the horizon, and gamers seemed content spending their money on their Super Nintendos and Sega Genesis side Mega Drives instead of buying a Jaguar. In late 95, the Saturn and the PlayStation dropped, with the 64 coming the following year, and people just pretty much forgot about the Jaguar. The Jaguar claimed to be more powerful on paper, 64-bit system as opposed to 32-bit system, but that was either inaccurate or irrelevant to most people because what they were seeing on the PlayStation and the Saturn far outweighed what anything the Jaguar could have produced and was producing at the time. Atari wasn't giving up, however, as that year they also announced their CD-ROM add-on, their Pro Controller, and CD-based titles such as Primal Rage and NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Speaking of the CD unit, or as I like to call it, the Atari Toilet, let's talk about that for a second. The Jaguar CD was the only hardware add-on for the Jaguar. It's also the only console add-on anything in history, as far as I'm aware, to look like a toilet. Only 11 games were released for the Jaguar CD during its lifespan, which were Battlemorph, Baldies, Highlander, Last of the Clouds, Brain Dead 13, Dragon's Lair, Space Age, Hover Strike Unconquered Lands, Myst, and Primal Rage, as well as 2 packing games I couldn't find the names of. However, since the release of the Jaguar, a lot of developers and homebrew developers, I guess that goes hand in hand, released their own games, and they even found and finished previously unreleased games and released them to the public to play if they could somehow get their Jaguar CD to work. There have even been games developed for the Jaguar CD that have been released as recently as 2015. In mid-1994, Atari and Sigma Designs co-opted a project to develop a PC board that could play Jaguar CD games on people's PCs. It was scheduled to release at the end of 1994, however it was never finished, and as a result it was cancelled. The Jaguar CD in the United States was manufactured for Atari by Philips. The initial shipment was 20,000 units. With the JT Storage reverse takeover coming soon on the horizon, it is possible, due to that takeover, that those 20,000 units were the only Jaguar CDs ever made. And that's basically the story of the Atari Jaguar CD. But we're not done with this episode yet, so stay watching, don't leave. After the Christmas '95 shopping season, it seemed Atari would not be able to compete with everyone else. The PlayStation was the clear winner of that season, and Atari admitted it had sold only $3 million worth of Jaguar merchandise in the entire last quarter of 1995. Hey, on the bright side, they made back their marketing budget. Although Atari stated they would continue to support the Jaguar, they began to lay off staff and moved on to smaller accommodations. Then Atari announced that they would be merging with hardware manufacturer JT Storage and discontinuing all of the support of the Jaguar. In early 1996, the last Jaguar title, Fight for Life, was released and almost all remaining Atari employees were laid off. See, it's kind of ironic because the name of that game, Fight for Life, that's basically what the Jaguar was doing the entire time it was on store shelves. Before the collapse, Atari had actually been assembling some Jaguar 2 prototypes. There was supposed to be a planned successor. It was going to be fully backwards compatible with all Jaguar games, and maybe it would have been a CD-based system too, so it could have played Jaguar CD games too. There are going to be 7 processors on 3 chips this time, with the fastest one running at 53 MHz. Wow. We've come pretty far, haven't we? Unfortunately, the Jaguar 2 never made it past the prototyping stage, and some of these do exist, and one board even made it on eBay for like $3,000, so you know. Get on that, Mr. President. I'm gonna kill that joke. Oh no. It's my only good joke, too. And that's basically all there is to know about the Atari Jaguar. In 1997, a new product came out, and that was basically a dental camera, and that used the shell of the Atari Jaguar, except painted white. Makes a lot of a difference. A more recent, I think, cancelled console offering, the Coleco Chameleon, stole the design of the Atari Jaguar for its own look, and now I think it's cancelled and everybody hates it. I don't know why, but if you guys want to leave in the comments why everyone hates the Coleco Chameleon, that'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, so that's the thing too. If you like this video, be sure to click up here in the cards to see the last 2 videos I upload on this channel, as well as my social media links, which will be up in here and in the description. Don't forget to tweet at me and post on my Instagram and leave a comment here telling me what you want me to make a video on, and if I like the idea, I'll do it, and if I don't, well then, I don't really have a choice, do I? If the internet wills it, it must be done. But if this is where we part for today, this has been Gaming History 101. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.